Okay, we are going to resume the meeting. I try not to be a party pooper this time, but still we are very late, so we will have to speed up maybe with the presentations. So we are going to continue the conference with the presentation of the output assessment of Water JPI projects. So I will start with the presentation, although I really want to thank my colleagues from Italy because they have really supported for this part of the conference. So Isabella Georgiou from the Université de Le Marche, Vittoria Laterza, who is with us, Maria Chiara Sole, who couldn't make it this time. And for the second part of the presentation, Francesco will talk a little bit about the impact assessment. So now that we have concluded most of the funded projects, it is very important for the Water JPI to have a clear visibility, a clear understanding of the main products generated by those projects. So have we been able to develop new models, new decision support systems, new governance approaches? We need to understand all that. Also to explore the main motivations, benefits and barriers of participating in Water JPI projects. So I will be presenting very quickly some of the results from an online survey that my colleague Julia Gavarrino from the Water JPI Secretariat launched a few months ago. So already thank you very much to all the project coordinators that replied. And then we will talk a little bit about how to carry out the impact of the Water JPI projects. I will say a few words about this so that we all understand when we are talking about the output and the impact assessment. And finally, a final objective is to identify areas that deserve further analysis and that should be addressed by the Water for All partnership, building upon our preliminary analysis in the Water JPI. So, what's the difference between the output assessment and the impact assessment? So basically, there is a difference as regards the time frame. So we can analyze the specific products that have been produced by the project. So this is really the output assessment. But then we also need to look at the effects of those projects in a longer time frame. So basically, we talk about the impact assessment 5 years after the end of the project. So as you can imagine, we are in a position to do the impact assessment for some of the Water JPI projects, but not all of them, because some of them, for instance, in biodiversity projects are continuing until September next year. So we will have to wait a little bit before we can really do it. So, in the next few slides, I'm going to show you the results from the output assessment. And, well, I cannot see this very well. I did this some days ago, so I don't remember. So, we were asking in the online survey about the motivations for applying to Water JPI calls. And some of you provided several responses. This is why I have included like blocks with the first option, second option, and third option, so the different responses that were provided. What we can see is that the main motivation for applying to the Water JPI calls was that the calls were well aligned with research interest. And I think this is a very positive result because it shows that our agenda, that the strategic topics that we selected are really in line with the thematic priorities of the different applicants. So I think that in that sense we really satisfied the strategic priorities of the different stakeholders. But a second motivation was also to develop collaborations. So we are always looking forward to developing our networking. And the Water JPI proved to be very useful for that. When we look more into developing collaborations, What we saw is that a little bit more than 50% of the respondents considered that, thanks to the JPI, the collaboration that was developed was excellent. And a very similar figure considered that it was a good collaboration. So overall, we can say that thanks to the Water JPI, we have been able to create new networks and to have successful collaborations. There was a question in the survey about what has been produced. What we can see from the analysis is that 50% of the projects, and I forgot to mention that we received almost 50 responses, so almost 50 coordinators responded to the online survey. And 50% of them explained that in their projects they have produced policy briefs, which shows an interest in really enhancing the science policy interface. No, on the other way around, sorry. 50% of them said that they didn't produce policy briefs, and almost 40% did. When we look at the scientific publications, we see that over 25% of the projects have generated more than 20 publications. Obviously, this is a little bit biased because it also depends on when the funded project concluded. But I think it's a very good result because it shows that there are many scientific publications that are produced after the projects are funded. So I didn't have the time to analyze this, but probably the ones that have only produced between 1 and 5 scientific publications, I suppose that are those that were funded at the end. There was a question about what are the main benefits of participating in Water JPI projects, and what we can see that the most voted option was the possibility to have sustained collaboration, which means that the JPI was very good for developing networks, but also to keep them. So basically, once project coordinators started to work with other partners, they did that in other projects. This means that more than 90% of the projects continued their activities after the funding of the Water JPI concluded, and they translated all that into other actions. So this is also a very positive result. So, looking at these results, we have tried to identify a number of recommendations for Water for All. And these are actually comments that were made by the project coordinators. So, one of the things that were mentioned is that we definitely need to improve administration. So, for instance, there were a couple of coordinators from Germany that said that it was very complicated because they needed to write the proposal in English, but also they needed to translate it into German. So that took a lot of time, and I see that Simon is smiling. It was also mentioned that it's important not to have differences as regards the arrival of national funding. So some funding agencies can pay very quickly, whereas others take a long time. And sometimes the projects are halfway through and the coordinators, the consortium, has not yet received the funding. So this is a big problem. And finally, there is a need to have harmonized reporting requirements. Another recommendation that comes from the comments made by the project coordinators is that we have to focus more on the scientific merit of the proposals and less on all the other elements. There were, again, 3 or 4 coordinators that said, why do you focus so much on communication? At the end of the day, what we want is to fund scientific excellence, and it seems that it's not a priority. So, just to consider that. Another comment, the possibility for additional funding if projects are proved to be successful. Well, this is a very good recommendation, but the problem is that sometimes we do not really know how to use the additional funding, for instance, from the structural funds or from other programs, but definitely something to explore further. Some coordinators also mentioned that it is necessary to reinforce collaboration between Europe and Africa. So this is very much related to what we mentioned on international cooperation. So I suppose that the idea behind is that the Water JPI is not only there to support research, knowledge transfer, but also to have real impact on the ground in countries that really need it. And also, one more recommendation, the necessity to fund more ambitious projects with greater funding, leading to higher TRL levels, more pilots, and better stakeholder involvement. Well, this is just a list, but we all know that, as somebody mentioned this morning, sometimes the funding agencies cannot really fund higher TRL. But we took note of that. The need to improve the multidisciplinary focus of calls. I mentioned this morning that in the strategic agenda of the Water JPI, we do consider socioeconomic topics, but for researchers, this is something that we need to improve. Following up on one of the comments made this morning, several coordinators, I think more than 5, mentioned that we should support longer project durations. They think that 3 years is not enough. Then Dominique explained why, but it's true that it was mentioned several times. It was also mentioned that we need to focus on basic themes rather than those that seem to be trendy. They didn't give more explanation, so I didn't really understand what it was meant here. I don't know. I suppose. But the good thing is that we also saw that our calls were well aligned with research priorities from the stakeholders. So fine. We put it there. The necessity to have a more balanced funding for all partners in the consortium, because it's true that some funding agencies can provide more funding than others, and sometimes it's a little bit unbalanced. It was also recommended to encourage the participation of developing countries in the funding of calls. Not easy to do, but we took note of that. It was recommended to keep the size of the consortia between 3 and 6 partners, and this is what we are doing in Water for All, so it seems that, yeah, we satisfy your requirement. And it was also recommended, and I think this is the last one, we need to ensure the participation of stakeholders for a more efficient transfer of results. And this is something that we are really trying to push in Water for All. This is something that I already mentioned. It is very difficult for us to extend the duration of the funding projects within the Water for All scheme, but something that we will have to look at, that we will study probably, Benjamin, is about this double funding possibility, how to make sure that the most promising projects can have some funding through the KIC Water. I put also the European Innovation Council, I don't know anything about this instrument, but I thought maybe why not, or others. So something to explore in the coordination team. And I think with that, I have completed my part. So, Francesco.
So thank you very much, Esther, for your introduction. Here in my case, I have to acknowledge for sure Isabella, Esther, Maria Chiara, Vittoria. Together we have worked together at this. It is a presentation of the preliminary results. What happened recently, together with Enrique and Dominique, we have been working for the European Commission as rapporteur for the assessment of Horizon 2020. Actually, we presented our report last week in Brussels. It was, I hope, well successful. Let's see, but this is what they said. So we thought, why don't we apply a similar methodology to Water JPI? So not to invent again the wheel, but to do what the Commission has done for the Horizon 2020. In that case, it was towards the water resilience strategy. This was our task. In this case, we started with what we have already delivered, and the point of discussion is if it's of interest to do similar work towards the water resilience strategy also for Water JPI. So there is food for discussion after this presentation. So we analyzed for this preliminary, I would say, outcome impact assessment, 84 technical reports For the other work, all the deliverables were assessed. And basically, our focus was on multidimensional impact assessment, scientific, technological, policy, and societal, to identify the lesson learned and to feed Water for All, what actually was already presented by Esther, partially. And the methodology was inspired by the Water Resilience Strategy Impact Framework, in order also to be aligned with the DG Research and what they have in mind when we talk about impact assessment. So these are the scope and data sets. 84 technical reports were analyzed, coming from 6 calls, and the data were analyzed towards 2 main directions. One is the SRIA. So we wanted to assess how much we have impacted the SRIA areas. This was very challenging, and I will show a couple of slides later on. And second, towards science, technology, society, policy, and market. So at the beginning, we did a systematic content analysis. This was done mainly by support of keywords. Actually, this was Isabella work. She's not with us, but I mean, acknowledgements to her. And this systematic content analysis was compared with the strategic research and innovation agendas. After that, a second step was started for the multidimensional maturity assessment in terms of readiness levels. The same definition of readiness levels that we have used for our Horizon 2020. We were also analyzing as much as possible, only on the basis of the technical reports, the stakeholder engagement and the results in terms of joint activities. So currently we can say that we are here. As Esther said, we cannot say that we did an impact assessment. We are in a way of impact assessment, but as you will see, the results are already very much of interest. I eliminated any reference to single projects. This will be done later on, because I don't want to highlight good practice, because after only for technical report this is not possible. So let's start from here. As Esther presented, this was a work in evolution, but if we want to see, and the evolution was also in terms of thematic, okay? So this was presented by Esther, but if we see the SRIA in terms of areas, we can summarize from ecosystem sustainability, safe water system to health and well-being. So in terms of areas, wording, policy areas, we can see how we started from some areas that were more targeted, expanding this even in line with what was first Horizon 2020, then Horizon Europe. First, what was previous, then the Green Deal. And we have also considered the cross-cutting axis, SDGs, wave, and circularity. So with this concern, we were focusing on technical reports, and the key takeaways will be not only towards the impact, but also towards the new knowledge. That is most likely one of the main added value, the new knowledge and the solid network. From one side, it was mentioned already, the engagement of large industries, authorities, was not as successful as we were expecting, but on the other hand, the new knowledge created from Water JPI was really relevant, and also the consolidation of network working on strategic topics. So this is a very good added value. So in terms of SRIAs, the two that were mainly considered for the systematic analysis were the 1 and 2, because were the one mainly related to the specific projects. And we were analyzing research stream, methodologies, results, and stakeholders, and comparing the areas. Here you see in particular how the analysis was done. So the research streams in terms of aims and the objectives, the methodologies were analyzed in comparison even in cluster of projects, stakeholder involvement and how much they were engaged. Results were analyzed towards the readiness level, and collaboration training, joint ex-post activities were classed into the collaboration. Finally, impact statement also was compared to the temporal scale. Here you see some results. In the left part of the slide, you see the SRIA teams and sub-teams. And here you see the number of projects that have been performing in the specific area. So it's interesting to see that when you cluster the project this way, not only the ones that were funded within that specific goal were mainly working in that specific area. So this is quite interesting because in terms of overall assessment, you will see where we had most likely the major impact. And if you want to summarize here, we mapped the 5 themes that were the 5 areas. The most represented, even in terms of results, were the sustainable water resources. And there was a strong focus on pollution and hydroclimatic events. Well, this is very general. Together with that, we have also specific practice. The second analysis was done in terms of field-based classification and methodological approach-based classification. So, as you can see here, in terms of field-based, we have the 5 fields with the sub-fields. In terms of methodological, we have lab, field research, control experiments, and so on. And by comparing the scheme 1 and the scheme 2, we can see the number of projects that have delivered this kind of results in the specific area. So this kind of assessment is also giving an idea of the approach that was finally used by researchers in Water JPI. And well, after this, a more deep assessment on the TRL, LRL, ORL, or SRL that was coming out of these numbers will be very interesting. So if you want to summarize this outcome, that is scientific and technological outcome, 4 main areas were targeted. New analytical tools for emerging pollutants was in the spot, for sure. Reuse and resource recovery were very much delivered together with the nature-based and hybrid solution. But also the contribution to standardization, this was mentioned this morning, was very relevant, mainly thanks to the aquatic pollutants, but not only. So, if you want to summarize all these in one table, we can see, of course, these are a rough estimation at the moment, but are already good to see the intersection between different projects. The main output, also the link with the SDGs, and the link with the policies that can be done. After this assessment that was mainly on scientific and technological output, we were focusing on the readiness level. We had a very nice question during the meeting in the European Commission. One of the DG asked, what is the readiness level? So we give for granted many things, but well, we have to understand that this language is subject to a lot of interpretation. So when we defined this impact readiness level, this maturity level, we were considering a publication from the DG, it was the DG Connect, and this publication was shared with the officers. Well, the definitions are quite logical. So the TRL are official. The other definition are, let's say, representing the similar level of maturity. And here you have the extract, because together with this presentation, there is also a preliminary report. If you analyze this readiness level, technology is clear to everybody. Societal is clear to many, and is very much related to the engagement of stakeholders, interface between living labs and stakeholder activity, not only stakeholder presence, but stakeholder activity. So how much the stakeholders have uptaken the outcome and output of the projects. When we move to organizational readiness level, I will give you an example. If a utility is a partner of a project and is only hosting your pilot, but the researchers are operating the pilot, the organizational readiness level is not that high. If the utility operators are operating the pilot that is owned by the university, then the organizational readiness level will grow. It's a very practical example. And on this basis, we were understanding also the organization structure and how this will interface with the uptake of innovation that we are delivering, not only at the technological level, of course, but also in other areas. In terms of legal readiness level, many policy briefs were delivered, not only in this project, but also from other projects, but only few of them, and we will see a table after this slide, were discussed in institutional network, were discussed officially in order to be in the track towards formal uptake by member states, regional government, and so on. So in this table, the results are summarized in a few keywords. In terms of technologies, most projects reached lab or early pilot validation, even because of the, as Esther said, of funding peculiarity of Water JPI program. Many focused on emerging pollutants, eco-hydrology modeling, but the prototype, so the demos were very few. So TRL more than four, was achieved by few of them. In terms of SRL, stakeholder engagement is almost always present, very much delegated to the communication, dissemination, and stakeholder engagement. Only a subset used co-creation living lab that in fact were proposed for upgrade into Water for All. And you can see the evolution of this more mature approach to the SRL in the evolution of projects. In terms of organization, most projects achieved strong coordination within the consortia, but only few established formal application plan or institutional agreement also with stakeholder. So an institutional agreement is something that has gone through the approval of the governments, for example, regional government and authorities. And we can see that in terms of steering committees, joint pilots, these were, in the evolution of Water JPI, very good improvement, okay, was observed. When we move to LRL, that is a legal regulatory readiness level, in terms of regulatory uptake, we had a few examples, but not as many as compared to the number of projects. Policy briefs were several, but recommendations were limited to the formal adoption, so were part of documents delivered to the consultation days and so on. Some projects, anyway, contributed formally to the discussion, for example, under Water Framework Directive or under the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, to give you some example. So we can say that in terms of TRL, SRL, or RL, we are in the range, I would say 3 to 6. That is our range. That is what was expected, actually. So, lesson learned is we have to work about the continuation of this pathway in order to have an impact fully achieved, most likely after the end of the project. So how to do it is a challenge, but numbers are supporting a possible strategy. What about the market orientation? Well, in terms of market orientation, of course, all the readiness level have to be considered. We can roughly summarize these levels, high, moderate, and low, where one-third is between low and moderate. But we have about 20% that delivered a better engagement of market players with clear exploitation plans, part of the final deliverables. So this evolution was also clear in the evolution of projects. If you want to summarize the impacts in terms of impact dimension, we have tried to put the indicators to consider. So scientific technological publications, very successful, more than 200 publications, patents, prototypes, as was mentioned before. Some outcomes, just to give some example, and in terms of policy, mainly support to Green Deal, Circular Economy Action Plan, and of course the following SRIA. In terms of societal, not only the stakeholder participation, but also the training was considered because a lot of focus was for early stage research. It was extremely successful in this program, and international collaboration. Living labs were actually started in terms of idea and with the JPI. This is a good achievement. And also the link with the CDGs and citizen engagement was evolving along the program. Policy and governance, in terms of indicator in which directive regulation we were interfacing, the number of policy briefs, and the type of directives, and also finally the relevance for the future research programs. In terms of environment, a lot of focus was on energy and climate efficiency, circularity, and here you see rough numbers. So resource circularity, resource efficiency was one of the indicators that we are considering, together with the improved ecosystem resilience that was supporting the climate target. If you consider the dimension of economic and innovation, we are considering the scale-up, possible scale-up of solutions, SME and market player involvement, the market uptake. And here we see the number of SMEs involved or in any way clearly interacting with the project, mainly with the focus on circular economy and resource efficiency. In terms of barriers and lessons learned, even from this case, it was clear that the non-perfect alignment in terms of member state was sometimes slowing the process to start the common activity to improve actually the implementation of pilot experiences, for example. In terms of data gaps, when you want to analyze an impact, you will cluster the projects and the data. In terms of TRL, even in the same projects, TRLs were fragmented. Some of them were up to TRL 6, some of them were to TRL 3. So if I am developing one technology, you another, and then you have to combine this, it's difficult to say that we have developed a full system at the similar TRL. And this was somehow a minus, but also a plus, because this is my point of view, personal point of view, the higher TRL were somehow training the lower TRL in terms of approach. Citizen engagement was very good in terms of dissemination and communication. The living lab models was started and actually is now more and more implemented. And for policy, the alignment with the regional and mainly regional, because the regions, actually last week we were in Brussels for the week of the regions. Regions are quite often, very often I would say, in charge of the implementation of water policies and programs. So the regional alignment and engagement was not that strong. Much better was the interface with the member states. And for project lifetime, this was already mentioned. So there's not only the need of understanding the best duration, bearing in mind also that when we want to engage companies and they have very long projects, sometimes they lose interest. So we have to find the best fit between the duration that we need to deliver impact and the duration that we need to get, for example, private stakeholders engaged in the project. So that's something that also in Horizon has been noticed. In terms of joint exposed activities, we can say something at the moment. We had the joint patents, joint publication, follow-up projects, of course, continue through Water for All. So at the moment, there are elements, to say a few words. And lesson learned is I would say mainly the last one. The transition from projects to programs to policy was delivered in terms of documentation, but the pathway will need to be coupled with an institutional pathway. So the institutional network, so the knowledge hubs that were mentioned before, are crucial to deliver this line. The recommendation were already mentioned by Esther, and I will finish with this slide. That, of course, I was also involved in Water JPI, so I'm not, let's say, external and independent expert as I was last week for the European Commission. So I think that really the seed has been very, very good, and Water for All is the continuation. What we do now, what we can do to make this work from preliminary much more solid. Most likely the most interesting activity ongoing is the water resilience strategy. Next year, second semester, we will have the research innovation agenda of the water resilience strategy. And ideally what we can do, we can support this agenda by delivering a similar analysis that we did for Horizon, also for Water JPI. So here I reported the structure of the report that we did for Horizon, and this is some proposal for future. So how this can be structured to focus on the water resilience strategy and the water strategies, to have challenge-based clustering where the challenges are not the ones of the SRIAs, but are the ones of the resilience strategy, on which we couple the multidimensional maturity assessment. The portfolio can be Water JPI and Water for All project, most likely, because these were not analyzed so far. In terms of tangible outcomes, we will have not only the assessment, but also good practice, innovative solutions, and barriers to uptake. And the stakeholders will appreciate this work because we will map the projects in a bilateral direction with the challenges and flagship actions. Of course, as researchers, we will deliver most likely the emerging needs for future R&D programming, and we can hopefully feed also into the water resilience strategy research innovation agenda. So this is what we did for Horizon, and to do this job, there is a need of going much deeper into the project, to go into whatever is publicly available, whatever is not protected for IPR reasons, because this has to be much more detailed in terms of interface with the flagship actions. So flagship actions are going full scale, and where innovation can accelerate these flagship actions. So many thanks for your attention, and well, any question is very welcome. I was waiting for Esther, but.
They pay me for asking. Is it on? Thank you. Just in your last slide or two, so it's clear that there are some really exciting projects that have come through, and you've listed them in the report to the Commission. I'm just wondering what's happening now. If there's any responsibility through the JPI or Water for All to make sure that the really good projects have a future life?
Now, what we did for JPI was this actually work that was preliminary to understand if there is a value that can integrate what the Commission has done for Horizon 2020. So for JPI, this has not been done. This is a possible future outlook. For JPI, we did what you see here, that is mainly challenge-based approach on the basis of SRIA. Okay, so what were the challenges that we were analyzing, that we were planning, and how much we have achieved these challenges. But in this specific moment, we think that deepening this towards the resilience agenda, the resilience strategy, is a very timely activity. But of course, it's another job that has not started yet. So in terms of typology of work is very similar.
Yeah, I suppose I was trying to get to, because I understand what you're doing here in terms of looking at the methodology, the process, how has that worked and how successful has it been? That's what you've analysed here. But then out of that, we've got some little nuggets that are the innovations that might have been thrown out through the projects themselves. And I'm just wondering if we have any processes in place to pick those up.
Yeah, actually, the best practice, and these are, this work started a couple of months ago, this impact assessment. So I have the few projects that are supposed to be good practice or best innovative solution, but as I went through only the technical reports, and technologies are very limited. So I didn't want to put in the spot the project of Ignasi, in the good or bad spot. I would say bad spot. He's a good friend, so I can say. Because I'm not sure. To do this job, it's important to go through the deliverables as well. Because technical reports, you can do this, I think, in technical reports. More than this, we can say something, but with a lot of disclaimer before that, not to offend anybody, because, yeah. What we did for the other work, we were also checking the publications, the deliverables was, I don't know how many months, 30 experts were hired and 3 rapporteurs. So it was a huge work. We cannot expect this from this analysis that was done by 2 people in 2 months. Honestly, I think it's already not bad. We expected even less. So, and also, the cases that we have highlighted are interesting from few lines. So if we go deep in these cases, we can get some interesting output to say. But yeah, we have to be careful, not to consider not only the ones that have written the good final report.
Francesco, first of all, congratulations for the massive works and the synthesis on so many indicators. I have the feeling that maybe the weakest point, which probably could also have been expected, was the transfer to the policy level. I'm wondering if, in your opinion, this is something specific of Water JPI, or considering the observation that you did even in other projects, is something more structural, the distance between the European research and the policy level, so something that is not only related to single actions.
Thank you, Francesco. Actually, you got the point. The similar, let's say, weaknesses were found also in Horizon. So a lot of projects delivered excellent policy papers, very well written, on which also scientific publications were finalized and published with a high impact journal. But finally, how these were put in the pipeline of institutional discussion for the final approval, well, in the best way, we had inclusion in the consultation. For example, there was a consultation of the Urban Waste Treatment Directive, and some of these cluster of projects did some document for the consultation. Of course, you have to be in the right time frame. That's also important. And when working with the Ministry, not of Research, but I'm working, as you know, much more with the Ministry of Environment, with the Ministry of Industry at the Italian level, I think that it's very important to put this on the agenda of, well, the politicians, actually, to be discussed in the Parliament, to be much more speaking in the same language. The language that we have in policy briefs is, I think, excellent, but then when you transfer, this is what the guy from EMASA said this morning. We have to adapt our language to what the institutions are uptaking rapidly. Because when a legislation is under discussion, it will take a few months, not a few years. This is what we see directly in Italy, for example. Another point is standardization. I have a good example here. We were working not in Water JPI, but it's a very good example, on standardization of energy audit, okay, in treatment plants. The project started in 2014, finished in 2017, and in 2021, the technical report of CEN, so the European body of standardization bodies, was published. 5 years after the end of the project. And this was considered extremely successful. In 2025, 11 years after the start of the project, I have been called from the CN because now we have the new directive and there is a need of European standard, and we have to completely rediscuss what was delivered at that time. So when we talk about innovation, the market is asking standards. The standards at European level are taking sometimes several years, and there is this misalignment between market uptake that will need a standard, carbon footprint, energy audit, and so on, and what we are delivering. So in this direction, it's not a matter of language that we use. It's a matter of willing to work without funding. That's the reality. So after this, now I'm working for free. And this is much more important than what I did in the project, where I was publishing my papers, and fantastic. Now, it's up to us if you want to have an impact after the project. Again, 7 years after the end of the project. That's a real case.
I'm afraid we have to stop there because we are running late. So thank you very much, Francesco. Anyways, you will hear about the impact assessment of the Water JPI because we will do it in the third phase of Water for All. And I suppose that Benjamin will say something tomorrow. If not, we can also discuss during the coffee breaks. Okay, so now I'm going to invite the previous coordinators of the Water JPI. We will try to do this kind of roundtable in 45 minutes so that we are done by 5 o'clock. So Enrique, Dominique and Véronique. Il y a des questions. Encore. Okay, so what I suggest is that I give you the floor following the chronological order of the coordinators. So the first question that we thought of is, looking back, what do you see as the most significant achievements of the Water JPI in shaping European water research priorities, and how can these experiences inform the strategic direction of Water for All?
So I can see that, of course, she is out of easy questions. Now it's only the difficult ones that remain, so well, we'll take them, and we will try and do whatever we can. Okay, let me recall those days. Okay, those days, I remember when we started with joint programming, we were debating between coordination, which was something little offense take, right? Let's coordinate, and alignment. Alignment was a bit more uncomfortable for the national agencies, because that means alignment means you need to reshape the way you do things and accommodate the way others do it, right? Some countries were more prone to coordination, some countries were more prone to alignment. In any case, alignment didn't really happen, but we have seen some interesting moves, right? I recall, for instance, when we started with the Water JPI, that some countries saw the contribution to Water JPI as additional funding for international cooperation, right? Whereas some countries saw it as their national program on water, few of them, and said, no, I'm going to take my national program on water and I'm going to put it out there for the Water JPI. The days the European Commission woke up in an energetic mode, they thought about this. They thought that countries could be doing that. In other more dull days, the Commission was happy with coordination, right? What we finally did is closer to the coordination, right? We take some funds for international cooperation and we do water, and we get fantastic results. I want to recall what happened to the other model, which is quite interesting. The Science Europe, which is an association of European funders and performers also, but for the funder side, they have this subset, which is called WEAVE. WEAVE is an interesting program. Some of them, I'm sure, know about WEAVE more than I do. WEAVE means a number of guys from different countries put up a proposal. The proposal is analyzed, is eventually approved, and it goes back to the national programs where it is automatically approved. So in that case, you are not using money for international cooperation, you're using the core of the money, right? It's a more advanced program. It's more transformative in that sense. We never got to the point. Actually, WEAVE is a very small thing within Europe right now. It's complex. The timing, the legal framework in every country is not an easy thing, but it's closer to what we thought alignment could be. What to transfer to Water for All? I could say continuity is the idea. You know, I mean, Europe has had more aggressive times. We have believed in ourselves more so than we did, right? Than we do right now. So I think for the days we're living, this is a fantastic tool, which is doing a lot with very little. And I think I couldn't change much, right? I think we have a fantastic program to continue, and the procedures in the different countries have more so than coordinated. I can tell that in Spain, for instance, we have been doing interesting developments because joint programming is not only shaping up the researchers for international cooperation, it's shaping up the programs. It has an interesting kickback to the funders, and it's more integrated now than it used to be in all the participants of Water for All now, and I think it's a beautiful way to go. And this is an assessment which is a bit archaeologic, because it's been 10 times for me since I last did away with this.
I fully agree about shaping the programs and the funders. In terms of, for me, one of the main achievements was to have been able to use our 3 years for shaping the European Framework Program, because as it was launched by Enrique, we use it continuously for discussion with the European Commission in order to be able to say, well, the countries in the JPI will take this on board because there is an agreement, but then the other topics are open for the EU programs, so H2020 and Horizon Europe. And it was intense discussions, but nevertheless, it was also an occasion to find a way of an alignment, another way to align some programs, the one we agree between the JPI members and the European Commission. I think that was one of the main achievements, and it should be continued. Not could be, but should be. The second one, I think, in terms of strategic orientation was to succeed to have Water for All in the list of the first partnership funded by the European Commission. And it was a kind of recognition of the work done in the Water JPI. Because for those really in Europe knowing the discussion at that time, it was a little bit complicated. Many subjects were competing. And in fact, we had to demonstrate what we already achieved, what were our vision for the future, and how we wanted to implement it. And I think that was also a major achievement in that sense. It was a kind of recognition of the member states. When the European Commission made the consultation about the partnership 26 countries say yes to water for all. I will not say, at that time we were 28, so there is one who say no and one which abstain, was UK as usual. But I think that was really something that we could not expect, because we were competing with biodiversity, with raw materials, agriculture, in climate change, ocean, and so on. So that was also a recognition of the work. And I think that in the future, water for all should be also, the basis of the future partnership. So showing what has been done during the partnership in addition to what was done in the Water JPI, in order to be able to say, well, we need to continue. The topic is still on the table. We still have drought, floods, crisis, whatever they are, not only about the water, but also on peace, on equity, for example. And so we need also to be sure that there will be a continuation, because this needs to be continued.
Okay, I've been the coordinator only for 2 years, and those guys, besides me, they are experts. So I feel really humbled and honored to be here amongst you. I think that, but I can still give my opinion about those achievements. Like this morning we saw that they've been tremendous. What was tremendous, I think, is also that all those countries, they learned from each other, and they were able, like you just said, to sign for Water for All for another step. And that's, at that time it was 10 years of being around the table with ministries, funding agencies, but also the European Commission, to look towards fresh water. And I remember that with the mission, the mission Ocean, at the beginning there was not the fresh water inside, and it was added. And I remember that the whole momentum was, in a sense, without fresh water, unfortunately. So you really put fresh water in the center, because this is very strong to have this joint programming initiative with all those 28 countries at the time, but 26 saying yes for Water for All. So for me, the to inform Water for All is to do not lose this this really vision of having ministries, funding agencies, countries, core ministries and funding agencies discussing together, and not losing that in mind, that it's only dialogue, policy dialogue, that is going to sustain Water for All and give this big vision for water and for solving all the problems that we need, and to bring solutions. Esther, what do you think?
In 2 minutes. Well, I think that one of the achievements is that we did not only fund joint calls. We have implemented many different activities, the TAP, the Knowledge Hub. We did a first mapping of water infrastructures, the international cooperation. So, as Enrique said, we have done a lot with very few resources. Otherwise, we wouldn't have continued in Water for All. So, many reasons to congratulate each other. Okay, second question. What were the main challenges? I could expand this question. What were the main challenges as coordinators one day that you said, I cannot continue anymore, this is far too much?
In being a Jurassic coordinator, my concern, what I recall from those days, which is not much, is the building of trust. That was the issue, right? We were an incidental assembly of representatives of the programs. Some of us knew each other from other initiatives. It's true that there was already probably a decade long of activity in ERANETS, and these ERANETS started leveling the field for joint programming initiatives, but the initiative was new, and we were not particularly aware of what it all was about. It took us a couple of years to realize. For instance, there were partners teaming up in the hope that this was a place to obtain funds. But no, it wasn't. This was a place to bring funds from your agencies and to put them in common, right? But in those days it wasn't clear. And I guess we needed to overcome the challenge of administration, which is, as we all know, very stiff in our countries, and it was difficult to find a window of opportunity to flush a call for proposals through it, right? It wasn't easy. And but on the other hand, and going back to what Esther was saying, to me, the projects that we have seen that Francesco was presenting and the illustrative projects used by Dominique in the morning are much more efficient than the collaborative projects of the European Commission itself. They are less ambitious. They have a smaller partnership, a smaller budget, but in my view, by nature, not because we are smart people, by nature, this is an area where you can actually obtain more with less. You know, it's a privileged dimension for a focused project and to deliver outcomes. I believe so. We have been seeing projects with plenty of money, more so than a call of the Water JPI in one project. They will attain many things, but per unit of investment, Water JPI, Water for All, is a fantastic place to invest.
I do agree. The most important is building trust between the partners, not only between the researchers, but also between the funders and all the members of the JPI, because some of them are not only funders, they are also policymakers, like the Irish EPA, for example. But it takes time, and I think that even in 10 years we achieve a lot, but you still need to work on it. It's never finished. And anytime that you are going for an enlargement, so bringing new partners, different partners and so on, you need to find a new equilibrium again, because you have the ancient one who are able to work together, and suddenly you have different other countries with different vision coming in, and that might be also a little bit difficult. I do remember not this time the entry of South Africa, but of Brazil, a large country with all the state agency, and it was almost as difficult as the EU. So how to find a new equilibrium, that's, I think, something important. To come back to one comment from Francesco, why not a bigger project? Because bigger projects are in the EU framework program. That was a decision to go for this medium-sized project in order to be able to achieve something in 3 years and to try to have a rapid impact on what's going on. That was also a decision. So if you take the decision in a group, then it's quite easier than to implement it. Nevertheless, you see, we started at 14 during your time, ended at 28, so in less than 10 years. So you need also to find the appropriate level for engaging with the different partners. They don't have the same capacities, they don't have the same resources, not only financial, but also human. In some countries, you have only one project manager for many JPIs, and partnerships and the national program. So you need to find a way to engage with them which allow them to contribute. I think that's an important one. And the last point I wanted to say is that, as you have seen, the level of commitment of the countries have been varying all the time. So you have to consider this variation all the time, and you have to be as open and flexible as possible, because this is the way the countries decided to work. So if you're aware of that, then you can find some solution to adapt to that. I hope that it will be the same in Waterfall in the end, but as I've seen for the beginning, it seems that the regulation have been strengthened, so that might be more difficult to achieve, but this is what I have in mind.
Yeah, so the challenges, I mean, for me, the challenge, I was the coordinator during COVID. So the challenge was to see all you guys in 2D and not being able to recognize Rui from Osman because they had the same beard. So that was one of the challenges that I had. But being a little more serious, I think we've seen for the TAP, you were saying, Esther, the success with the TAP and all that. We see that in those tools that were built, like the knowledge hubs, the TAP action, the thematic annual programming action, which is a great tool, that some funding agencies could really align behind those TAP actions, for example, not all of them. And I think the lesson one of the lessons we can learn here is that being flexible, being adaptive, and maybe having some different geometry of countries and partners to work on funding solutions. I mean, to work on solutions together, but with their meanings, and not trying to fit a square in a round with some funding agencies or ministries. So I would just see the glass half full and say that it's all those challenges and lessons are really positive to freshwater and to the next chapter in Waterfall.
So, if you don't mind, and given the time constraints, we are going to skip for a moment the third question, because I think the fourth one is probably more interesting. In your view, to what extent did the Water JPI outputs translate into tangible research, innovation, or policy impact? And what mechanisms or approaches were key to ensuring that results were actually used by stakeholders? Difficult one.
A difficult one. Well, good enough. Francesco already introduced part of these issues. See, the projects that the Water JPI does are not at the end of the knowledge value chain in general. There's still a distance to the market or to the policy applications, and some of the projects reach there, but not all of them are supposed to do it. We don't pay for expensive demonstration sites or pilots. We have a more humble approach to stakeholder engagement and to other activities. We are closer to research, and I'm happy to say that. I continue to believe in research, and the innovation side will eventually come. Of course, not in all projects we will see tangible outcomes, and time will have to say, as Francesco was saying, sometimes it's 10 years after the kickoff that results pop up. I wouldn't change much the approach of Water JPI. I'm positive that the products are coming. I see ambition. I see young coordinators and researchers, and that's a very important issue. and I'm sure if we put the resources in their hands, the results will pile up.
Yeah, I do agree. That was my first idea. But where we can improve, I think that one of the things we saw in the past is that we need to better integrate with the other funders. We were discussing with the European Commission and some of their type of actions, but it's also true at the national or regional level, depending of the countries. And if we want to increase or accelerate some of the uptake, we have to work on this integration between different programs, different type, which means in some countries to work more between the academic research council. Where is ACA at the back? Sorry, you're still ACA, you're not a Research Council Finland, for me, and the Innovation Fund. Because there are two funding agencies and they have to discuss and they have to find the limits and see how they are bringing the project from one side to the other. I think that's something that we need to systematize a little bit more. And it means that you know the tools, but how you can articulate them. And this is for having tried in France to do that with the Innovation Fund. That has been just a nightmare. So I think there is a view, but it can be done within the partnership at partnership level and national level, but it should be done also at the European level between, I'm looking DGRTD, with the framework program, with the missions, because they are doing demonstration, with the EIC. I saw that the KIC was mentioned. Well, for being KIC, you have to have industry in. So I'm guessing that will be more challenge at this stage, considering where the JPI and Waterfall is. You have a gap in between. So again, for me, it will be more probably easier to close the gap with the policy side, because we have already results transfer in policy brief, and so that's easier both at EU, national, regional. For the depth of valley for innovation, we still have a gap there, and it's just by working with the other programs. I'm guessing that's what I have. Nevertheless, as Enrique said, you need time. So it means that you cannot expect to do that within the project. Even some years after the project, it may be 7 years after the end of the project. So you have to consider how you maintain the knowledge, how you maintain some of the details, you know, that you are not mentioned in the reports, deliverable and so on, to have this implementation back. And it's particularly true with all the data that are collected by the project. I didn't mention that this morning, but this is also a key challenge, because you have a lot of data collected in the project. You have a lot of projects dealing with case studies, demonstration sites, which are sometimes in the same basin. And then if you want to measure the impact, you would have to measure cross-impact, because several projects will have been dealing with the same basin, with the same problem. For example, it was mentioned the Danube, pollution in the Danube. You will have so many programs interacting there with their own projects. So you have to consider how you can collect the data, how you make accessible this data for the next researchers, and to be sure that they will use what was done in the past. So openness, fairness will be crucial.
Yeah, thank you very much, both of you, for those reflections about impact. I have a strong background in science policy, so I read all those policy briefs that were produced, and including the one on ecosystem services Murray told us about this morning. I mean, the quality of those policy briefs is remarkable. I mean, all the policy briefs that were out of Water JPI were really very, very good. Yet they have to be transferred to the policymaker. So it takes time, like you said, and I would add this word valorization that you were just mentioning. It's all about valorization across projects, across policy briefs also, because we have to consider this in a transversal manner. We're not in a silo in water research and innovation. So yeah, I would say Waterfall does already what it takes to gather stakeholders, gather policymakers, push and go on that. Benjamin and the team push and go on that. We need this valorization in all dimensions.
With this, we go to the last question, which is about the future. So as Water for All takes over and expands the scope of European water research and innovation, what would you advise regarding transnational collaboration?
I will repeat myself. There was this guy on the glasses in the video that was saying that it was about time to integrate quantity and quality, and I firmly believe that this will be very important for the future. Europe is completely different in terms of water today as it was 20 years ago, and we need to integrate those two. And out of that, I guess we should continue pushing. But I would like to stay for 1 minute a little bit into the politics of innovation in Europe. You know, Europe is confronting much more important challenges today than it did in the past. We may have a very interesting policy for water and the best policies in the world. Very well. It could very well happen that this is true. But our technology is very little relevant in the context of the world. Think yourselves. Think of 3 European technologies which are leading in the world. See if you get to the 3rd one. It's not easy. We lost it. In the 21st century, our contributions have been there, of course, but are not the ones that come to your mind. You know, we have skipped them. Right? We haven't been there so far. And there are chances that we are not there. Europe had an ambition. By the turn of the century, we had political ambitions, we had industrial ambitions. Today, this is not happening. And here we are, the Europeans, not invited to the most important appointments in world politics. And we are in the middle of a discouraging international context. But it's time to reaffirm Europe. And research can do it. And it's about time for research in Europe to contribute to changing the game. And it will not happen tomorrow. We are slow. But it begins with us. And particularly to the youngest guys, remember that Europe used to be different. I'm not going to cite the fantastic projects of the last third of the past century. In France, you had a few which were leading the world. But it's not happening. And our lifestyle and our ideas and our beliefs are not popular in the world today. So it's time to reaffirm. I think we should invite ourselves. We should continue with this trend and forget about these first 25 years of this century, which have not produced much in terms of leadership, and try to regain leadership through research. In 10 years' time, we will be a military power, which we are not today either, but we will be, which, if you ask me, I think it's a good idea. I'm not pro-war, but I think it's a good idea today. But we should be much more than that. Okay, that's what I believe.
Yeah, as I said, this morning I'm retired, so now I can select in what I'm doing. And one of the things I decided to do, to go on what you said, Enrique, is to inform and engage with school, with colleges, in order to present them the challenges in science, because I don't know if, but you see we have less scientists applying, at least at the universities. People are not really interested in some countries by coming and be a scientist, which is so annoying, I would say. So start by informing at school and college about what is science and what is interesting to do in science, and in particular in water management. Some people discovered that we can do economics, we can do social, we can do chemistry, biology, hydrogeology, and so on. So you can select the field in which you can add. And I think that's a way to work on a daily basis to try to continue the work that has been done here. As I said, for the for the European agenda and waterfall, I will also say, be aware of the barriers that we identified. They are still there, even if we just decrease them, they are still there, and you may have some of the important additional barriers coming out if you're ignoring it. And one of them is the humans behind the researchers and the funders. And the limited time they have to work on what is important. During lunch break, we were discussing phasing out, and that was a good question. Do we need the EC money for the future? That's a very good question. I think that should be a debate, at least, on that. Nevertheless, I'm not really working for waterfall, sorry Benjamin, but I think we need to work for waterfall number 2, because you're in the last phase, so it's almost too late for this last phase. And I say, well, like we had a Men in Black 2, 3, 4, and 5, if I know. I would like to see also some waterfall 2, 3, 4, and more, because we need the time to solve these challenges. I think that's it.
Well, thank you, both of you, for those insightful remarks. I realized that I answered a little in the previous question when, because it's what would you advise regarding transnational collaboration? So I was already trying to design some variable geometry of countries or agencies or partners in waterfall to work together. I like very much to have a 2, 3, 4, 5 waterfall. I think in the future is to fight to keep this research on water. And it's not that easy because there are a lot of concepts like the One Health, and now we are working on the One Mental Health concept that try also to take the environment and so under the pretext of doing so much interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary, one should not forget that to have a focus on fresh water is really, really important. And so really it's to push, like I said, to push for fresh water. And it's what I would advise for the future. And because you have a huge responsibility in waterfall for that, I'm happy to help. I'm not retired yet, and yeah, you should really not forget that fresh water.
Okay, so thank you very much for all these different perspectives. So maybe we have 5 minutes. So maybe if people in the room want to comment, or if you have any questions for the coordinators. Estrella? No? It's not.
Now?
Yes.
Is that working? Okay. Now, this is just a comment to thank you for these reflections that you have provided to all of us. It was very inspiring. Congratulations to Esther and your colleagues. Also to Miguel Angel for the organization, because it's a very nice program. Thank you all.
Thank you, Estrella.
Just a few comments, not necessarily for the three, because you did a great job. That's out of question. I just wanted to say, Esther, when you showed the survey answers, I think you are underestimating actually the impact these projects have on a researcher's sequence, so to say. We are publishing papers years after the project is finished. And we usually have a line of research which is given by those different projects. So this goes much further. And the other point I wanted to make, and this was a very good decision of the three of you, that you stick with these middle-sized projects, 3 to 6 partners. In Biodiversa, they go up to 16 partners. This is way too big, and this is not the niche of these partnerships. It's really the small projects, and I completely agree with what you have said. They're way more efficient. From a coordinator point of view, it's way easier to do this kind of work. And yeah, please take the recommendation Esther has done, and keep this for Water for All. It's really, really important.
Thank you. Point taken. Yes, Enrique.
No, this is an important issue. See, because these days there are discussions in Europe for the new multi-annual framework, financial framework for research, right? And collaborative projects are under heavy discussion these days in the Commission. So the Commission needs money for other issues. They are already taking money from sacred places like the Common Agricultural Policy. So these things will happen, and I think it's important to defend the efficiency. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? No? So that means that you all agree with what was said here. So thank you very much once again to all the former coordinators, and thank you very much for all the work that you've done. And there will be a picture. Yeah. Actually, we should take a picture. Yeah, the four of us. And in the meanwhile, Victoria, you are going to launch the Mentimeter? No? You could do it? If not, we improvise and we skip it. Ah, you have it, okay. Come on,
You're in the between?
I'm between ladies already.
Yeah. And I'm the shortest.
Okay. More concentrated.
Thank you, Enrique. Thank you.
We will take a picture of the whole group later on. So, I have to say that the afternoon has been, from a logistical point of view, very complicated. So, let's try to do the Mentimeter. Miguel Angel, if you want to come over. We wanted to pose you some questions and also to initiate a debate with you. So let's go how it goes. So.
Yes, we have had many presentations from people that have had responsibilities in Water JPI, also in the partnership, but of course they are not the only voices that are important here. None of this would have been possible with all of you. We are an ecosystem where everyone is impossible, so we would like to have opinions from all of you and maybe pick up some of them for further discussion. And maybe a structured way to do it is to launch this Mentimeter where you can log in and give your input. There is a QR code that will be in the screen soon that you can use to access the. Okay. Does anyone need technical support for logging in?
Yeah. Yeah, it works? Does it work for everybody? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay.
It can take time. Yeah.
So did you like the questions, Dominique? No? Okay. So I didn't propose them.
But you are free to answer the way you like, even though you don't like the questions. I don't know if we can project the results, but for this first question about research that should be research areas that should be prioritized, well, the number one is water and health, and the second one is water efficiency and climate adaptation. Maybe can any one of you comment why you select these about water and health? Maybe someone who didn't intervene today, this morning, this afternoon? What do you think is important in this area should be prioritized? As I said, the first one was water and health. Any of you willing to say why did you choose this option?
If no one else wants, you need to listen to me again. Well, water is a resource for everyone. And policy has not, for me, not yet understood how much linked it is with our health. And once this link has been done, maybe a lot of other things will come much more easily. That's why I think it should be way in front, because it has the most important impact on our futures.
Thank you. Nice. Now, Benjamin.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a good news, because this is the open call, the ongoing call, water and health. So I'm very happy to see that this is the first. It shows that even if it is not possible to do joint call with partnerships, we can mix discipline. We can play disciplinarity with mixing the water domain and the health domain in the same call, and I think this is another way to push for mixing scientific communities with our call, and I am quite happy to see that this is something that is attended by people.
Yes, in fact, as someone indicated in our webinar, we experienced that huge interest for several communities, and so let's see how we manage that call. Of course, it will be successfully, but with a huge effort. Maybe we can go to the next question. So the day is being long, so we would like to go maybe with a couple of questions for each of the answers you gave. So the next question was about the main barrier to apply the research results in practice. Then the main barrier identified was poor communication between researchers and practitioners said adaptation. So any one of you that answered that question that would like to comment on it, the reason why you selected this one, or any additional remark? Any newcomer? When I say newcomer, I say someone who didn't have the chance to speak. Yeah, Ignacy.
Well, I think if it's ranked at the first, it's because there's quite an agreement. So I have the feeling that as researchers that we're doing lots of things that we think that they are important, but we're not facing the problems that the sector has. No? So that's why I think that this gap between researchers and practitioners is something that we should cover much more, and that should be included in any project, in JPI or any kind of project.
Also, as Benjamin indicated, it's also in the essence of Water for All to cover that gap. And I think that we have a comment over there.
Yeah, well, yes, I would like to comment also to the first question. So I'm Thomas Struck from DECEMA, was coordinator of the aquatic pollutants Transnet project, so a networking and coordination or transfer project, which was unique, I think, in the Water JPI and in the landscape. And I'm very glad that this is point one here in the ranking, because that's also what we have seen in the work of this Euronet co-fund aquatic pollutants, and as a networking and transfer project, it's substantial to be aware. So what practitioners need, what their demands are. Well, this is what many of the projects have in mind, but it's also important to understand and to have in mind when it goes about dissemination and exploitation. What are, let's say, the information resources that these stakeholder groups, the practitioner groups use, and these are quite often not the hiring scientific journal. So that means there is a discrepancy between what, let's say, the research community is required to deliver to be ranked high with respect to their competition at their universities, and the information sources and, let's say, the information format that the practitioners are used to use and to look at in their daily and practical work. And that's what we have seen there that the non-technical issues, the communicative, dissemination and exploitative issues are the real key challenges to have a significant impact of the results of the projects.
Thank you, Thomas. Maybe we can give a chance to the topics scoring 2 and 3. Anyone would like to comment on them? Any of them? Giuseppina.
About the funding, because lack of funding, we have not lack of funding, but sure we have a problem in make alignment among several kind of funds available at EU level, for example. And for the beginning, we had this expectative to have rules, clear rules, to join the research funds with the cohesion funds, in particular the interregional, that was in some way able also to solve some of the problems because from Esther and some other Francesco recognize the lack in regional approach in Water JPI and now in Water for. So I think we have to work on this more to reach more easily the policy maker at the regional level.
Yes, just a short comment. Sometimes I have the impression that people involved in projects, mainly researchers, academia, we take into account the academia needs, the industry needs. What about the societal needs? What about science, citizen science? What about social groups? What about NGOs? What about, the society we are serving to? Citizens are not involved. There are so many consumer organizations. Why are not involved in projects, research projects? We are working for them. And yeah, those kind of stakeholders, I think that they are the big missing ones in Water for All, Water JPI, and all kind of research projects, programs.
Yes, I totally agree, and Waterfall is fully aware of this, and this is why in all the calls we have launched so far, there is a topic on governance and societal aspects, also relevant for the technical topics that may be the main core of the calls. Maybe we can go to the third question. It's about which type of research output is most useful for water management decisions. Maybe we can go again for someone commenting on why he or she say yes to the first answer. Anyone dares to comment on his or her decision? His or her choice? Don't be afraid. As you know, we are very inclusive. We welcome any comment. Some of us said that we disagree with some of the things we said.
Perhaps I can speak to number 4 rather. Certainly from where I come from, people who are making decisions are not necessarily reading peer-reviewed science. In fact, it's a very rare occurrence that you see a dialogue between people who make management decisions and the research discourse. So our metrics are all on peer-reviewed publications, which are not read outside of the academic silo. And that's why I put that as 4th. So I think it's a disconnect between our ecosystems of knowledge creation and business, or the world around us.
Yes, well, I think it's quite difficult to rank these in such general terms. But yeah, if good technical guidelines and good tools, they are the most useful. But I mean, there are also lots of exceptions to that, I would say, especially when it comes to tools. There are so many tools that has been developed, but that are simply too complicated or too difficult to learn for the people it's supposed to serve. So I mean, it's just to comment on that we need to be. Yeah, it's all again about the involvement of the stakeholders, and and make tools that not only the stakeholders that has been involved in the project can use, but also that can be used by, because that's often the case, that they are involved in the project and then they learn it gradually, and so maybe it's okay from their perspective. But need also to have what's say independent users involved that can really try it out fresh, well, without having any background in its development. So yeah, there's a lot to say about that, but yeah, I also put it at number one. So but yeah, it needs to be the right guidelines and the right tools.
Thank you. Clara, please.
Yeah, for really the guidelines or tools, when talking to like our ministries, you know, for the environment or also agriculture, they are managing waters. They actually really like to have outputs that would be some methodologies or certified methodologies for them to apply some of the new legislations. There's like so many new legislation, namely on, you know, the pollutants and environmental health, and maybe that's why the topic also is ranking so high, and they have to be implemented across the different countries. So I can imagine that would be very useful for them. Of course, for scientists, you know, some of these things might not be really novel because that's like something they've been studying for a while, but there would be a good balance. You know, it would be nice to find a good balance. So in the project, we can really provide this technical guidance, you know, some really like pending issues that are already in the regulation, and then of course look beyond that through the topic into also unexplored or less explored areas. But yeah, maybe that would be something that would be very useful output, you know, at least when talking to our ministries, they were like, you know, yeah, exactly. We are not reading the scientific publications, or we don't understand what you mean, and then we are explaining to them this is non-target analysis, and you can learn from that this, and they're, wow, this is really good, but what do we do with that? But if you can provide them, you know, next to this, like new information, some guidance, how to measure peroxoids in water, because now they will have to monitor it, and they don't know what to do about that, then, you know, it can be a useful output. But I think we should just not settle with these only, right? This is also like science, so we should also explore the less explored areas that are not in regulations yet, because we really have to move things forward. Yeah, so I think both of them.
Thank you, Clara. Maybe we can go to the fourth question. So how should European water partnerships like Water for All improve collaboration? This time I will not go for maybe necessarily for the first answer, the more best ranked, maybe for any other. If you would like to comment, someone who had not the chance to comment. Alice.
Sorry, I was trying to stay quiet. I'll pick the second one because I believe if you're going to improve collaboration, you need to make sure you have every type of stakeholder involved. So I think Water for All has a great opportunity to do so, both in the industry and in kind of the applied side, as well as on the policy side. And I think that's really missing. So I think that will be key.
So you think there is more margin for improvement there than in other areas?
Put a caveat. I got out of Water for All 2 years ago, so I hope it has improved, but I know there is always room for improvement.
Thank you. Someone else? Estrella.
Yeah, in my view, we don't need more joint funding programs, but we do need stronger stakeholder engagement. I mean, in our case in Spain, I have tried to bring in the partnerships our sectorial ministries with responsibilities, with competences in the policy, and they say always, no, we don't have people, we cannot, no, but it's very good that you be there, and we are there, but we fund the research, and but the connection with the policy makers, the truly policymaker, at least in our case, is very difficult.
Thank you. Cynthia?
I think joint programs is extremely important. We have to have groups together, but my experience is that the stakeholder engagement also requires funding. I mean, there is a lot of situations that, oh, I have a very good idea. Do you have funding? How much do we get to participate in this project? No, sorry, we cannot have money for stakeholders. Okay, then I'm not in. So I think we need a joint funding to put people together and putting also stakeholders together. We cannot suppose that they are going to work for free.
Yes, something that caught my mind was that comment by Francesco when he says that he was working for free. We're privileged to know that he's working for free, but not everyone can do it, and not the stakeholders either. So, any last comment? Anyone? Well, if not, what's next, Esther? So thank you very much for participating in this Mentimeter and for all these comments.
So now I would like to give you some practical information. So you are all invited to participate, to follow the guided visit that we have organized. So there will be a couple of people guiding us at 6:30. So please be at the entrance of this building at 6:30 if you really want to follow the visit. So they will really show us the landmarks of the city of Malaga. So obviously you are invited to that. We will be walking from 6:30 till 8 o'clock, and then they will take us to the restaurant. So there will be a dinner at 8:30. We will show you the address of the restaurant. I have to double check with, with Alfonso just to make sure that I don't send you to another place. And I will also write my phone number, so just in case somebody gets lost, you can call me. And finally, I think it would be nice that we take a picture of the whole group before everybody goes. I know that some of you will not be there tomorrow, so I think it would be nice to have this picture. So the suggestion is that we all come to the stage. Sorry. For the tourists, just at the entrance of this building, at 6:30, okay? So everybody comes to the stage.
Let's see if we will all fit here.
And thank you very much to the people online. I don't know how many people are still connected. So thank you very much and see you tomorrow.